It's 7 p.m. Monday, November 4th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on NEWSCENTER tonight. The National Intelligence Service says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has, quote, decided to meet with U.S. President Trump in December at the latest. It also says Pyongyang-Washington working-level nuclear talks may happen in the coming weeks.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in and his Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe agreed to repair strained bilateral ties through high-level dialogue. This comes after their first official face-to-face in more than a year.
The boycott by South Koreans on Japanese goods continues to take its toll, with the number of online purchases of Japanese products dropping sharply in the third quarter.
And South Korea's Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon tells an international forum on air pollution and climate change that countries must come together to tackle the issues. South Korea's Environment Minister also relays public concerns about fine dust blowing in from China to his Chinese counterpart. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Adam.
And I'm Han-daeun. Thanks for joining us. Amid stalled denuclearization talks, South Korea's intelligence agency said that working-level talks between North Korea and the U.S. could be held in the coming weeks.
It also said the third round of the Kim-Trump summit may be just around the corner. Let's get more details from Kim Mo-kyun, who is on the line for us at the National Assembly. Mo-kyun, fill us in.
Sure, Adam. South Korea's National Intelligence Service said that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had been planning to hold his third summit with U.S. President Donald Trump in December, hinting at possible working-level negotiations between North Korea and the U.S. in the near future. After attending the parliament's closer audit of the intelligence agency on Monday, main opposition Liberty Korea Party lawmaker Lee Eun-jae quoted Intel chief Seo Hoon as saying that working-level discussions between Pyongyang and Washington could be held as soon as this month, or as late as early next month, before North Korean leader has plans to hold a third Pyongyang-Washington summit in December. She said that the NIS expects talks to resume around then, since the two sides have already gained an understanding of each other's perspectives through last month's working-level talks in Stockholm, and because Kim Jong-un previously limited negotiations to the end of this year.
Now, Mo-kyun, did we hear anything about Kim Jong-un going to China before his summit with President Trump?
Yes, the NIS also suggested Kim might go to China this year. According to E, the intel agency says Kim is making plans to visit China in line with the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Pyongyang and Beijing. The agency also mentioned the precedent of Kim visiting China before his first and second summits with President Trump, and that they are looking into possibility should the working-level negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington go smoothly. That's all I have for now. Back to you guys.
Our Kim Mo-kyun at the National Assembly for us tonight. Thank you. President Moon Jae-in, meanwhile, said that the third summit meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. will be the most critical moment in the peace and denuclearization process of the Korean Peninsula. Speaking during the 22nd ASEAN Plus 3 summit in Bangkok this morning, President Moon put a great emphasis on the now revealed third meeting between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump. He also said that resolving years of confrontation and hostility between the two parties will never be easy, but added that Kim and Trump share trust in each other and as well as willingness to continue talks. With that, President Moon called on the international community for its support and cooperation in driving the Korean peace process to the finish line by achieving the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Also in Bangkok, President Moon met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for one-on-one talks amid heightened tensions between the two nations. During their brief encounter, the two leaders agreed on the need to resolve their issues through dialogue. Our Park Hee-jun is in Bangkok with more.
An unexpected meeting in Bangkok. President Moon Jae-in and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had a one-on-one conversation as they were waiting for the ASEAN Plus 3 summit to begin on Monday.
President Moon and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had talks in a friendly but serious atmosphere. The two leaders shared the opinion that South Korea-Japan relations are important and reaffirmed the principle of resolving bilateral issues through dialogue.
During the 11-minute-long talks initiated by President Moon, the two leaders expressed hope that the ongoing negotiations through the foreign ministries would help improve ties. They also shared openness to all possible options to find a solution, including a form of higher-level discussions. Their last official talks took place on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in 2018. Seoul-Tokyo relations took a sharp downturn following the Seoul Supreme Court's ruling last year that ordered Japanese firms to compensate South Korean victims of wartime forced labor. Ties further worsened after Japan imposed export curbs on Korea's tech-heavy materials, prompting the South Korean government to take countermeasures of its own, one being the termination of the General Security of Military Information Agreement. Various factors could have driven this positive change. President Moon's letter was hand-delivered to Abe by South Korean Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon during his recent visit to Tokyo. And Abe sent a message of condolence to Moon over his mother's passing last week. Chile's abrupt cancellation of the APEC summit later this month also meant there will be fewer opportunities for the two sides to meet before their intel sharing pact, known as GSOMIA, expires at the end of the month. The presidential spokesperson did not elaborate on whether Moon and Abe discussed the sensitive issues of GSOMIA or forced labor, but she said the Blue House anticipates their ties to advance in a friendly and forward-looking manner. And with their meeting having happened unexpectedly, the spokesperson could not rule out the possibility of additional discussions before the president departs for Seoul. A series of surprises regarding South Korea-Japan relations. With the two countries agreeing to resolve their differences through dialogue, there are now better prospects of some positive change in bilateral relations. And hopefully this could create a positive atmosphere for the anticipated trilateral summit with China this December. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News, Bangkok.
National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang, on a visit to Japan, has stressed the need for cooperation among the G20 countries to promote free and fair trade. In his keynote speech at the G20 Speakers Summit in Japan today, Moon pointed out that the global order in trade and investment is hampered by protectionism, adding that to restore this, joint action by the G20 to uphold its principles is needed now more than ever. He did not directly mention South Korea's trade dispute with Japan, but his remarks are seen as a reference to Tokyo's trade restrictions. The speaker will wrap up his stay in Japan with a lecture tomorrow at a local university on ways to repair the two countries' relations. South Korea's defense minister says that the country's military intel sharing agreement with Japan, GSOMIA, should be extended if it helps in any way to uphold South Korea's national security. His remarks came during a meeting held today at the National Assembly. He added, however, that the final decision lies with the Moon Jae-in administration. Minister Jongun said he has reiterated the importance of GSOMIA repeatedly, but also highlighted that non-security-related issues should be considered as well, pointing to Tokyo's export restrictions on South Korea. Whichever way the government decides, he said, it's vital to address concerns if Seoul lets GSOMIA expire at the end of this month. He reassured lawmakers that security-related concerns regarding GSOMIA have been shared and discussed intensively within the administration. Online direct purchases of Japanese goods by South Koreans saw almost a 26% on-quarter drop in the third quarter of this year. The decrease comes as Koreans continue their boycott in response to Japan's trade restrictions against Seoul. Kan Young-woo reports.
Tokyo's export curbs against Seoul in July prompted South Koreans to start a voluntary boycott movement called No Japan. Those taking part stopped buying Japanese products and refrained from taking trips to Japan. Data released Monday by Statistics Korea showed the purchase boycott movement has become more evident on the web. The total value of Japanese goods bought online by South Koreans dropped in the third quarter to about $41 million, an on-quarter decrease of almost 26%, the biggest decline on record. given that total online purchases by South Koreans abroad saw a 21% on-year increase over the same period, the impact of the No Japan movement is clear. It's also the first time that the on-year growth rate of Japanese goods bought online by South Koreans over a 3-month period did not crack the 10% mark. In fact, the increase on-year was only about 2.3%. Unofficial Statistics Korea said the boycott did play a role. Kanyu, Arirang News.
South Korea is facing a slew of diplomatic challenges with its once promising relationship with North Korea at a standstill and its ties with Japan at their lowest levels in years. Now, Kim Bo-kyung asked a prominent historian what he thinks Seoul could do to turn things around.
Jared Diamond, renowned writer of the book Guns, Germs and Steel, has come to Korea to promote his new book, Upheaval, and has some advice that might help Seoul find solutions to the diplomatic problems it is currently facing.
In particular, he made 2 key recommendations to South Korea regarding its ties with Japan and North Korea. According to Diamond, although South Korea and Japan are both facing potential adversaries in the region, such as China and North Korea, unresolved historical issues were hampering their cooperation. He said a sincere apology from Japan was the key to restoring ties, but added that Korea must wait patiently until the Japanese come to a reckoning on its own with the country's wartime past. Still, the professor emphasized that the 2 countries need to maintain cooperation in certain areas.
Both South Korea and Japan face big problems with the depletion of fisheries around the world. Both South Korea and Japan face big problems from dangerous neighbors. So even though South Korea and Japan may disagree strongly about some things, it would be good to work with Japan on the things where you have the same goals to foster cooperation in at least some areas.
Touching upon inter-Korean ties, Professor Diamond emphasized the importance of steady back-channel dialogue in order to break the current impasse. He named Finland as a possible benchmark for South Korea to look to, with the Scandinavian country having found a way to survive despite bordering Russia to the east, formerly the Soviet Union.
The Finns learned that what they do is engage in constant discussions. They're not publicized discussions. They're off-the-record discussions with Russia at every level, from the presidents to cabinet ministers to government officials to low government officials.
The eminent author shares more of his insight in his new book, showing ways the world can deal with global challenges, citing the examples of 7 countries that went through a national political crisis. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea is calling for international cooperation to fight air pollution and climate change, and it will first step up the partnership with China. Lee Kyung-hun reports.
South Korea and China will strengthen their cooperation to reduce fine dust pollution. Environment Minister Cho Myung-rae and his Chinese counterpart Lee Gan-jae met on Monday in Seoul and signed an action plan for the so-called Clear Sky project. The 2 first proposed a plan back in February, and they agreed to hold policy consultations on an annual basis to curb air pollution. Now the action plan will take the form of tangible efforts through cooperation in 3 areas: policy and information exchanges, joint research, and the commercialization of technology. In particular, the 2 sides will exchange information on fine dust forecasting. Also, South Korea will install environmentally friendly technology in China's coal-fired power plants, and China will expand the number of cities subject to joint monitoring of air quality. Also Monday, the Chinese Environment Minister attended an international forum in Seoul on air pollution and climate change, where South Korean Prime Minister Lee Na-gyun was also present. There, the Prime Minister stressed the importance of regional cooperation in tackling climate action, saying that air pollution transcends national boundaries, so it can only be solved through transnational efforts. In line with that, he said the results of a joint study by South Korea, China, and Japan will be released this month. Lee Gan-jae echoed the importance of working together. He said China plans to give top priority to environmental issues and will increase cooperation and exchanges with other countries. China's role is especially important as a large portion of Korea's fine dust is believed to blow in from China, while the major domestic contributor is exhaust gas. Jongun, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports fell for the 11th consecutive month in October amid slowing global trade and the ongoing US-China trade spat. But the production and export volume of semiconductors has been going up and demand for chips is expected to rise. Kim Heesang reports.
Data shows semiconductor exports, which account for about a fifth of South Korea's total exports, are likely to go up in 2020. According to the Trade Ministry on Monday, semiconductor export volume went up 16% on year to more than 2,500 tons last month. Between January and October, chip export volume was up 5% on year, and it has increased by double digits on year since July. Semiconductor production also increased. Data shows chip production in the third quarter went up 8% on year. But the value of chip exports plunged 26% on year to around $79 billion in the month through October due to a sharp fall in memory chip prices like DRAM and NAND flash on oversupply. But with memory chip prices having almost bottomed out, experts say value of chip exports is expected to recover next year.
The memory chip industry is cyclical with a 2 to 4 year cycle of ups and downs depending on supply and demand. And this cycle is shortening on technological advances. We saw a chip boom in 2016 and a downturn in the latter half of 2018. Companies like Micron Technology and Samsung Electronics have lowered their inventories, and demand for chips is set to pick up.
Global demand for chips is expected to increase on demand from data centers and the wider adoption of 5G technology in driverless cars, AI, and IoT. Global Research Institutes estimate demand for memory chips to go up by between 5.5% and 17% on year in 2020. Kim Heesang, Arirang News.
The so-called sharing economy is starting to take off here in South Korea for things such as homes and cars. But there are still a lot of hurdles, especially in its mobility platforms, as seen in last week's indictments of the heads of a local ride-hailing service for operating without a license. Now, Kim Jae-hee looks at the future of South Korea's sharing economy.
This secure, mutually beneficial platform connects its host and guest, where rooms are rented out at a reasonable price based on blockchain technology. But things are not easy for home-sharing services in Korea. The CEO of the company bemoaned the many obstacles in the way of further expansion, including outdated regulation.
A tourism law passed in 2011 only allows foreigners to access homestay services, which are not available for local tourists. Instead of creating a way for local startups to tap into the domestic market, the government blocked it altogether.
Home sharing is not the only sector that has run into legal roadblocks. South Korea's ride-hailing platform Tada is in hot water after company executives were indicted by prosecutors on charges of running the service without a legal license. Even global sharing economy platforms are failing in Korea, with Uber Eats pulling out of the country last month amid tough competition. Local sharing economy platforms are concerned whether Korea can keep up with the global trend due to regulatory setbacks and resistance from traditional businesses.
Sharing economy is fundamentally based on IT technology. So naturally, South Korea should be at the forefront when it comes to adopting sharing economy services. But it's not. It's lagging behind because of regulations that are dragging it down.
Experts say changes are needed for Korea to keep pace with the global competition.
The fourth industrial revolution and the shift towards the sharing economy is the world's biggest stream of innovation. Korea will have to quickly catch up, and the government should take action to facilitate peace and compromise between traditional industries and new startups.
Expert also added that it isn't too late for Korea to fulfill its potential and encouraged the government's push for a negative regulatory system, which deems all activities legal unless they are expressly banned by the law. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
Now, the 2020 U.S. presidential election is exactly 1 year away and will either see President Trump win a second term will bring in a new face in the Oval Office. To find out, Arirang TV spoke with an expert with an unrivaled ability to forecast the winner for his analysis on what promises to be a blockbuster race. Yoon Jung-min has the details.
With the U.S. presidential election just 1 year away, key factors for predicting the next president are based on the strength and performance of their party. That's according to Professor Allan Lichtman from American University, who has predicted the last 9 U.S. presidential elections from 1984 through 2012. Lichtman says his predictions are based on 13 factors, including the economy, foreign policy, social unrest, and a third party. When asked about the latest impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump, the professor says it could be a factor that affects the upcoming election.
Particularly if things go badly in a Senate trial. So while I'm not ready to make a final prediction, by finally doing what is right morally, constitutionally, and indeed politically, the Democrats have at least put themselves in a much better position to win next year.
Lichtman says there's not much to predict from the ideology or experience of the candidates, but the public needs to pay attention to the performance of the administration, including foreign policy. However, he says there has not been much success on foreign policy for the Trump administration so far.
The killing of al-Baghdadi was hardly noticed in the United States. Most Americans didn't know who he was. And on the other hand, I would say the policy in Syria, which was denounced even by Republicans, the withdrawal, the handing over of Syria, in effect, to Iran, al-Assad, and the Russians, could well be a foreign policy failure.
The professor went on to say the election also depends on the success or failure of the economy and whether the Democrats emerge with a charismatic figure who can attract voters. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
It's been nearly 150 days since the pro-democracy protests started in Hong Kong as thousands of protesters call for political freedom from Beijing. Local media say scores of people are being arrested every day as authorities aim to crack down on protesters. Her Oh Soo-young with the latest.
More than 3,000 Hong Kong citizens have been arrested since the pro-democracy protests began in early June. According to local media, the number of those arrested hit 3,007 as of October 31st, with the daily average sharply rising after city authorities enforced a mask ban early last month. For the first 3 months, around 15 people were taken into custody on a daily basis, but from mid-September, the average has grown to 35. This weekend, police made 200 arrests on Saturday alone, as protesters took to the streets, holding guerrilla-style rallies across the island. Buildings, including China's official Xinhua news agency, were vandalized by protesters, while armed riot police fired tear gas at them. Over the past 5 months, the protests have escalated from the initial opposition to an extradition bill that would send criminal suspects to China into a push for greater political freedom from Beijing. China pledged last week to tighten control over Hong Kong and Macau, particularly when it comes to national security issues and how the city's leaders are selected. On Wednesday, Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam will meet China's Vice Premier Han Zheng, and all eyes are on whether China will try to invoke policies to strengthen its control over Hong Kong. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Tickets for a newly opened monorail near Seoul are selling out every day. This is the Wolmi Sea Train on Wolmi-do Island in Incheon. The train takes passengers to tourist hotspots in the area and has been named one of the 100 must-visit places in the country by the Korea Tourism Organization. Our Ji-young went there and files this report.
South Korea's longest urban tourist monorail, the Wolmi Sea Train, stops at a number of popular attractions, including theme parks and streets full of cafes and seafood restaurants. According to an official from the Incheon Transit Corporation, roughly 1,400 people a day board the train on average. As it carries a maximum of 46 passengers per ride and only 4 or 5 trains operate every hour, the tickets tend to sell out quickly.
We open at 10 a.m. and close at 6 p.m., but visitors come even before the service starts at around 9 and wait for 2 to 4 hours to ride the monorail.
The 2-car monorail loops around 4 stations, including Wolmi Park Entrance and Culture Street, at a speed of 10 kilometers per hour.
This monorail service runs roughly 6 kilometers from Incheon Station to several places on Wolmi-do Island. Passengers can get a great view of the coastal waters of Incheon as the race track is as high as 18 meters in places.
During their 35-minute journey around the circular route, passengers can also enjoy the famous view of Wolmi-do Island, including the silo wall painting, which holds the Guinness World Record for the largest outdoor mural in the world.
I saw silo wall paintings, amusement parks, cruise ships, and the beautiful glow of sunset over the sea. It was a fun ride.
Passengers can also get off and reboard the train to move from one spot to another on Wolmi-do Island.
I came all the way from Gwangmyeong City in Gyeonggi-do to visit Incheon. It was a fun ride, and I took the train to Chinatown to have noodles with black soybean sauce and enjoy the tour at Songwol-dong Fairy Tale Village.
The construction of the monorail was mostly completed in 2009, but service only began in October of this year after a number of safety issues were rectified. Ji-young, Arirang News, Incheon.
All the trains on Seoul Subway Line 9 will all have 6 cars from today to ease congestion on the most crowded line. There had been a mix of 4- and 6-car trains on the line, causing them to get crowded, especially during rush hour. The line is also on a key route that stops at major transit stations at a much faster speed than other lines. Starting from the end of this month, the Seoul Metropolitan Government says it also plans to increase the 37 trains currently running on a typical weekday to 40. South Korea's Navy is taking part in the Pacific Reach exercise, a multinational submarine rescue drill aimed at improving salvage efforts in case of accidents in foreign waters. The 1,200-ton sub Isunsin will be deployed to this year's exercise, held for 12 days, starting today off the coast of Australia. Taking part are 6 countries, including the US, Australia and Singapore. K-pop stars BTS have once again shown their popularity in Europe, winning awards at the MTV Europe Music Awards 2019 for the 2nd year in a row. At the ceremony held in Spain last Sunday, BTS won in 3 categories: Best Group, Best Live and Biggest Fans, beating acts like Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish and Taylor Swift. BTS won the most awards of any music artist on the night, and it was the 2nd straight year they took home the awards for Biggest Fans and Best Group. Bordeaux striker Hwang Hee-jo was the key man in Sunday's 2-0 victory against Nantes, scoring 1 goal and assisting the other. The 27-year-old who joined the French club in July claimed his 3rd league goal, helping Bordeaux move up to 6th in the table. Hwang's goal was even more special for Korean fans, as the entire Bordeaux squad had their names written in Korean on the back of their shirts. The club had organised the event to commemorate Hwang's arrival to the club and to thank their Korean fans. It is that time now where we take a look at Arirang's digital media content.
And today we have another episode of When in Korea, or Wink with Justin.
Hey guys, so if you're interested in dating a Korean guy or maybe a Korean girl, this is an episode you should definitely not miss. Enjoy.
I'm curious, how many girls have you confessed to?
Confessed to? Let's not get into it. We don't have all day here.
I would say in Korea it's much more official. You have to, most people, I feel like even after a blind date, after you meet for 3 or 4 times, they say 우리 이제 만나자, 정식으로 만나자, meaning let's start dating officially.
우리 오늘부터 1일 뭐 이렇게 정하는 거, I guess? Like this is day 1, I guess, kinda, in Korea.
Especially for the younger generations, people do so many events like to confess to their crush. So I feel like Korea is much more, they make it really, really official.
우리 오늘부터 1일.
Yeah, they make a big deal out of it.
They make a big deal out of couples.
Yeah.
There's a couple app.
The apps, the pictures, Lovestagram, all that.
Rings.
Dates, yeah, they do couple rings and then like 100 days, 200 days, 300
22 days. What?
What?
They have
Is that a thing?
tutu day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you date for 22 days.
Damn.
What a big achievement.
Right?
22 days.
More for like high school, middle school, but
Yeah.
still.
그때는 친구들한테 200원씩 받나? 20원씩 받나?
Yeah, they gave
Is it like a joke?
you know, a little fun little.
Congratulations on
Oh
your
my god.
22 days.
Oh my god. I just imagined it. It's so cute.
But then I got a lot of 22s. Like, woo.
The biggest difference in couples in Korea, for me, the most surprising thing was overseas, Christmas to me was a family holiday. People are with their families, but in Korea, Christmas is totally a couple's holiday.
That's a good one.
You get so lonely.
Yeah.
I don't leave the house.
I haven't left the house in a while.
Speaking of Christmases, Valentine's and White Day.
Yes, and Pepero Day and Rose Day.
No, but you know how like overseas, like Valentine's
It's both for guys and girls.
Yeah, but in Korea, like it was Valentine's and I expected a gift from my boyfriend, but like he was like, no, Valentine's is for girls to give to guys and White Day is for guys to give to girls. And I was like, excuse me?
I think this is a good comparison point. What about the public display of affection?
I've been told off by grandpa once.
Really?
Yeah, I was waiting for the train. We were on like the platform and we were just like kind of like
There's so
hugging
many
each
grandpa
other
trains
and just
though.
kind of like being all cute and stuff. And then the grandpa was like, what are you doing here? Like, you can't be doing that here. And we're like, oh, okay.
My bad. Yeah. They consider it a little rude, I guess. Almost.
Yeah, maybe.
Like whether it's public transportation. Yeah, you can hold hands
Yeah.
or like maybe kind of cuddle. Okay, so this is something that you can also kind of only find in Korea, right? So the 군대, kind of like the 군대 thing, right? So, because 군대 or military service, you know, as we all know, guys have to serve, was it like almost 2 years in Korea? And it's mandatory because there's still the war going on and you're drafted into the military.
I dated a guy before going to military, but we broke up before he went.
Was that a part of the reason you broke up?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've only seen 2-3 couples around me that have survived the military
Survived.
service. Yeah, it's survival. You survive that.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for watching. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
The sky is looking clear today with decent air quality.
Yes, but the morning lows are continuing to drop as the days go by, so it is a good idea to bundle up. Let's get more details from our Natalie Sark, who is at the Weather Centre for us. Natalie.
Yes, that's right. We've enjoyed mild daytime temperatures, but as winter approaches, morning lows are dropping quickly. Seoul started off with the morning mercury at 9 degrees Celsius, and the lows are set to plunge to 3 degrees on Friday. So do dress accordingly. But there'll be sunny skies over much of the nation, bringing temperatures back up tomorrow, and it'll be slightly warmer than the seasonal average during the day. Tomorrow morning, temperatures will drop again, and it'll be the lowest in Gyeongju at 5 degrees Celsius, while Seoul kicks off at 9 degrees, and Gwangju, Busan, and Jeju make it into the low teens. And we'll have mild daytime highs, mostly in the high teens and the low 20s. In Seoul, the mercury will reach 18 degrees Celsius, 19 in Daejeon, and 21 in Busan. Tomorrow, the west coast of Chungcheongnam-do province will be wet in the morning, but other regions will see clear, sunny skies. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
Okay, that will do it for today's Arirang News Centre. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Keep it tuned to Arirang for news in depth coming up next.